Hi guys, White Warlock here. This is going to be another deck guide video, and this time it's going to be on the different cards you can run in the red-blue items deck. Um, I collected some cards that you could possibly switch out, and I'll talk about each and one of them and how I would rate the swap, kind of, right? So, yeah, I have some are like matchup dependent depending on your meta. Others are preference and are very close, and others are just a different play style you might want. Um, and yeah, those differences can change your win rate obviously. But as long as it improves your preference and your play style, it might increase your win rate, while it might decrease other people's win rate. So this could be a little personal. There's probably not one 100% correct answer. Um, with the death of Pixelborn and the reducing in public testing and more like private testing from teams, you don't really get that number one correct deck result but you get them maybe after the tournament, but by then they're not 100% correct anymore because the meta changes in response to that tournament. So I've made some categories, and I'll first talk about um, Greystone Dragon and Fang Crossbow. So Fang Crossbow is a card that we currently play two of, um, but you could realistically play three. However, this one is like probably the most wrong card to include of basically all the cards here, maybe besides How Far I'll Go or Judy Hopps, because a third Fang Crossbow is really situational, and I would basically only do this if your meta is full of red purple or full of the mirror or like decks where you really need either the -2 attack or the Banish the Dragon, especially the Banish the Dragon part. That's the most important part why you would include a third. Um, because then you're basically playing the Fang Crossbow as if it was a Dragonfire, right? But then a 3 cost Dragonfire, which is inkable. So yeah, in a meta with a lot of Sisus, either one of the three, you could play a third crossbow. Um, and the Greystone Dragons are different ramp pieces, which are better into decks like Green Steel, where your characters are more likely to be discarded or die. Um, or you could possibly play in a meta with a lot of removal decks, where Gravestone Dragon becomes a lot better as well. But in the average meta, your characters don't die that often, and you're mostly the one that kills characters of your opponent. So Gravestone Dragon has some of the problems in that way, and it's also possibly the worst turn 3 play you could do. Um, well, except for not playing anything, right? Or just playing a one drop shield or whatever and passing your turn, obviously. But for turn 3 play, Greystone Dragon is one of the worst you can do because it does nothing, but it starts accruing value over time. So it's a good queen target, but that's about it. Um, Either one of these two you can replace with the 4 Fishbone Quill. In the case of the Greystone Dragons, I would probably not change the Fishbone Quill for the Fang Crossbow. Maybe in like a full red purple meta where there are like 6 red purple players, 1 green steel player, and you, then the Fishbone Quill becomes much worse because it's also not the best card ever um, against green steel, and then you can replace a Gravestone Dragon for it, and then maybe the Fang Crossbow if there's a lot of red purple. Or you could possibly cut one of the shields and only play one shield. Currently, I play two. I will talk about playing a third shield later. Uh, but those three are like where you could try to find. Let's say you want to play two Greystone Dragons, you could cut one Fishbone Quill and one shield. As long as you do both, it's better to play 4 Fishbone Quill, 0 Greystone Dragon, than 3 Fishbone Quill, 1 Greystone Dragon, in my opinion. In basically all metas, but there are obviously exceptions. If your meta is literally only green steel, then Greystone Dragon becomes obviously much, much better. All right. Let's go to the second. So now I'll talk about playing a third shield. That would be in matchups where, or in metas where LeFou is much worse. So this is a meta with almost no red purple, right? Where like the turn two play LeFou do nothing is pretty bad. And in that case, you can play a third shield to cut one for one LeFou, and then for the other LeFou you can play another two drop. You can play the fourth scuttle because right now I have a three LeFou split and three LeFou three scuttle split, and you could go to a four. You can go to a fourth scuttle if you don't want to play any LeFous, or you could just go for four scuttle two LeFou if LeFou is a little bit less of a need in your meta. And you, let's say you have a lot of green steel, you could also play Corella. The problem with Corella is that it dies to Shift Diablo, Sing Storm, and yeah, removal, your other removal like Ice Block plus Small Sisu or Brawl don't have that weakness, and then you just basically wasted the card against a deck where you want as many cards in your hand as possible, so you don't discard the vital cards like Hiram. So yeah, those are cards you could replace in certain situations. It could also just be preference, right? If you find that playing LeFou doesn't fit your playstyle at all and you want four Scuttle and two LeFou, that's okay. And maybe you're more like an item player and you kind of want this shield. It also gets a lot better if you play Maurice instead of the dragons. I'll talk about that now. So this is like kind of my um, most debated option for me is if I want to play two Dragon or two Maurice. They're both good in other matchups. So Maleficent Dragon is better against Red Purple against and Red Blue because um, it kills in Red Blue it kills Tamatoa without having to have a crossbow or a um, or double ice block. And in red purple, it's just that Maurice is really bad because it just dies to Medusa and Brawl. Same goes for same goes for uh, the red blue matchup where it also just dies to Brawl and Medusa, and even in the mirror. Let's say you play against a mirror, if they have an ice block, it also just dies to small Sisu. So that's the problem of Maurice, but it is really, really good against green steel. If you have this and you have an item in hand, let's say it's a workshop even, uh, then you can draw so many cards and just uh, immediately like on turn seven, if you were able to kind of like survive the early phases, just completely wreck them, right? So with drawing cards, so that's why you could decide to play Maurice. It's also pretty good against blue steel, and Maleficent is a little bit worse against blue steel because you can basically kill everything you want in blue steel, except for Ward Aerial. Maleficent doesn't help against Ward Aerial or against Cogsworth, right? And Maurice at least lets you draw more cards, or it lets you play a dime for 5 and then draw a card and then play other things. So I would say if your meta is more blue steel and green steel, then I would probably play the two Maurice. If your meta is more red purple and red blue, then I would play two Maleficent. All right. Now I'll talk about Vitalisphere, a third Vitalisphere. This would be for like red purple or hyper aggro more a little bit from a hyper aggro where you need the rush, especially if you play four scuttle, or you even play one drops. I wouldn't play any one drop currently, but let's say you're uh, Mulan fan or something, then the Vitalisphere can work with Mulan. And the second crossbow is a cut against hyper aggro because it's just too slow, and hyper aggro doesn't play any dragons most likely. But you would, and you're kind of um, like cutting the one fan crossbow and staying at one. Um, Kind of weakens your red purple matchup, and the inclusion of and the replacement of the Vitalisphere increases it a little bit again, so it stays a little bit more even as it would have if you do not make this change. Then I'll talk about the Sisu package. So I was trying out double hand Sisu and the fourth LeFou over the three scuttles. Um, I didn't end up really liking it that much. It didn't really change the red purple matchup that much for me. If there's a lot of hyper aggro, then you definitely play the Sisu because it can the four defense can definitely help. It also when you're playing against green steel and your opponent plays a cove, it just doesn't do anything. Green steel, like in the later stage, it doesn't really have cards in their hand anyways, and if they do, you are definitely losing the game unless you yourself have a lot of cards in hand and you have a good position, at which stage you don't need the Sisu. Um, I myself like the Scuttle a lot. It basically draws a card almost every time you play it, maybe like 80%, 85%, depending on how many items you play. And yeah, the fourth LeFou is a consideration over the third Scuttle, but currently I like the 3-3 split. But that's a change you can make in basically any meta. Uh, the fourth LeFou for the third Scuttle is definitely better in the heavy RP meta, but yeah, and maybe you can play like three Sisu, no scuttles, and maybe like cut the second shield for fourth LeFou against like hyper aggro where you need more characters, right? So that would be a change like that. But currently, I really am enjoying the scuttles, and I was very unimpressed with the Sisu myself, so don't really like that at the moment very much. Okay, then I'm gonna talk about Aurora and Judy Hopps. So I've seen people recommending me to play Aurora. I've played it myself at the beginning of the deck's construction when we tried out a lot of cards, and it does do wonders sometimes. More the second effect, which allows you to look at the top card of your deck and then put it on top or bottom. So that's a reasonable, good card to do, but uh, a good effect to do, but yeah, the ward effect, giving your items ward so they can't be chosen for abilities or effects, is a little bit underwhelming. There's not that much item removal. However, if this, let's say this deck becomes meta and the reaction of the meta is to play more item removal, then double Aurora definitely comes more into play. I think I would change them for or the dragon or the Maurice depending on what you play. Or you could cut a little bit down on the items, or maybe play only two Maui, depending, of course, on your meta. But cutting Maui is a little bit dangerous because it's such a good card against red purple. And then for Judy Hopps, it's kind of the same as the Aurora. It's a reaction to what if this deck becomes meta? Do you want to play Judy Hopps? I would say no. I would rather play the Aurora in response to the meta's response. But if you want to be like a little bit of a counter deck, then you could play the Judy Hopps. It's also reasonably okay against red blue, especially on the draw when they play Fishbone Quill, and then you can Judy Hopps it, but you do allow them to draw a card, and they already activated that Quill once, so they already always have an advantage, and you just spend your turn 3 on a 2/3. So yeah, not great, but like I basically always say to people that suggest changes, the 3-drop slot is already so heavily used that, like with Queen or with Workshop, right? That or with Brawl, that including 3 drops need to have an extra thing why they're good, and Judy Hopps don't really have that at the moment. And then finally, I want to talk about how far I'll go. So that's a recent change suggested in the Discord. I do not like this. We don't really have any singers for it. We only play 3 Maui, but play 0 Grammatala. And to really play Grammatala, you need to play 1 jump ahead, and 1 jump ahead is actively bad in this deck because you only play 2 dime. If you ever throw 1 dime away, and the other dime is on the bottom of your deck, you basically just automatically lose. And if you throw both dimes out of your deck, you just lose regardless. So it's very dangerous, and you don't really have a fourth row that you want to play on turn three, because Hiram is okay on turn three, but you really just want to play a queen or a workshop on turn three, and not the Hiram, because the Hiram will just die to Sisu and to small Sisu if they play small Sisu or Brawl on turn three anyways. So you don't really get that big of an advantage. And against decks like Blue Steel, where they cannot kill the Hiram on turn three, they also cannot kill it on turn four. So that much of an advantage you don't get. And against that matchup, drawing a lot of cards is also not that much of an advantage anyways. So if you would play a card like How Far I'll Go, um, you might have to change the whole deck, or you could replace an Incubus. You could replace the third Be Prepared. You could replace third Ice Block, and then also a third Sisu, the third human Sisu, the face of Sisu. I don't personally like this, but that would be an option, or you could just change the deck around. But if you like the playstyle of How Far I'll Go and One Job Ad, just play stock. I think that's better. That fits your playstyle better than just play stock. Yeah. All right, those are all the cards, alternative cards I wanted to talk about. If you have any others, uh, send them in the comments below, and I might make a video about them if there are enough cards linked, or I can respond in a comment. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you later.